Welcome to the What If It's Not Depression Vodcast. I'm your host, Dr. Achina Stein, and today I am interviewing Dr. Tabatha. She is a functional gynecologist. I'm a functional psychiatrist. She's a functional gynecologist, and we have an overlap of people with certain symptoms that we're going to talk about today. But she helps women determine the root cause of their gynecological issues and helps them heal naturally without birth control pills or surgery. She is triple board certified in obstetrics and gynecology, menopause, and functional medicine. She has the unique situation of being licensed to practice medicine in over half of the country. So you now have the ability to work with a functional physician virtually if you reside in the state in which she's licensed. She is the host of the Functional Gynecologist podcast, where she shares her wisdom and knowledge with women everywhere to reclaim their health. She's also a keynote speaker, mentor, wife, mom, and grandma. And by incorporating functional medicine into her women's health practice, she's able to provide women with the tools they need to optimize their health and happiness, which in turn allows those women to pursue their purpose in life. She's devoted her life to giving women a voice and a choice when it comes to their health and well-being. If you enjoy this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe. Welcome, Dr. Tabatha. I'm so happy to see you. And just so the audience knows, Dr. Tabatha and I have gotten to know each other over the course of the past year. And she's an amazing woman. She has a great story and has a big heart, helps lots and lots of people. And I'll let you tell us about why or what led you to functional medicine and functional gynecology specifically. And I know that many doctors who do functional medicine usually have had their own personal struggle or a struggle within their family. And that really drives them to find other solutions. So why don't you start with that?
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Dr. Achina. I'm super excited that we finally have connected and we are doing this because, you know, your listeners, my listeners, they're looking for different solutions. And like you mentioned, our areas overlap so much. You know, as a gynecologist, I deal with a lot of mood disorders and there are just so many interconnections. So this conversation is super important. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
You know, I've had quite the crazy life. I was not ever going to go to college or do anything academic with my life. It was not on my radar. I was a wild child, free spirit. I was going to be a rock star when I grew up. And I ended up getting pregnant in 11th grade and dropping out of high school. And my experience with being a teenage mom or going through a teenage pregnancy, being on Medicaid and food stamps, I was assigned a doctor who was not very nice to me. Things were done to me, not explained to me. I had no voice in my care. To this day, I wonder about some of the things that were done to me. Like, what were they thinking? Why did that happen? And, you know, I developed Hashimoto's thyroid disease out of that situation because I didn't use my voice. If you believe in the chakras, you know that I was suppressing my voice and not being heard, and I developed a thyroid disease from it. And so I made it my mission to give women other options so they didn't have to go through the hell that I went through. And so I went back, I got a GED, I went to a community college, I kicked butt and went to a school and finally made it to medical school. So I really took my pain and, you know, found my purpose out of it. And this drove me to go down the path of taking care of women and helping them. But just like you and a lot of other doctors, we get lost in this broken system, this medical system, the training system of residency. It's very malignant. It's very broken. And I got to the point where I was so overworked and I just gave of myself until I had nothing left. And I forgot why I even went into medicine in the first place. I was at the point where I was cranking out the patients. Administration every month was like, you need to see more patients, you need to do more surgeries, you need to deliver more babies. And I broke, I literally broke. I had a herniated broken disc in my back. I had surgery. Conventional medicine failed me. I re-herniated to the point where I couldn't even function. I couldn't go up and deliver a baby. I couldn't stand at the C-section table and do the surgery. So I took 6 months off to try to figure out what the heck is going on. And I heard of Dr. Mark Hyman, and I started studying, and I realized, oh my gosh, there's this entire world that we're not exposed
I know.
As medical professionals, because we are too busy trying to survive, and we're just so inundated with seeing the patients, and we don't take care of ourselves. We don't look outside of conventional medicine. We sure as heck don't read anything outside of conventional medicine. So it was very eye-opening to see an entire world of health and wellness and prevention and just root cause medicine. And it was a huge slap in the face, like, oh my gosh, this is why you started on this path 20 years ago. Wake up and get to work. And once your eyes are opened, you can't go back, right?
Absolutely. I say that all the time when I went through my journey with my son and everything that he was going through. And once I learned functional medicine, I had to learn more and change. I changed my practice completely. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So I tried to go back to my regular job as an OBGYN and start asking patients, well, what are you eating? Realizing they're living on Diet Coke and McDonald's. How are you handling your stress and your broken marriage when all they want is the quick fix for their crazy heavy periods? And as a gynecologist, I was trained, you start with birth control pill to shut down hormone production and try to give synthetic hormones to keep things balanced. That's standard number one. Mm-hmm. When that fails, you try a hormonal IUD to locally prevent the uterus from growing too much and having heavy periods. When that fails or isn't tolerated, you go to the endometrial ablation and then the hysterectomy. Those are my 4 treatment options for crazy heavy periods. And I will tell you, more often than not, they failed. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking, how do I use this root cause medicine to fix these heavy periods, fix these painful periods, these hormone imbalances, all the side effects of what I had done with the birth control pill and the IUD. Right.
Yeah, which by the way leads to fibroids or PCOS or endometriosis. There's other conditions too.
Yes. So what I realized was I couldn't do 15-minute appointments anymore. It just doesn't work. You really need to sit down and listen to the patient and look at them as an entire person. And so I left my job. I left all the security of that job and what comes along with it. And now I just do functional medicine for women. And I will tell you, I used to do 4 to 6 surgeries a week. Now I don't do any surgery, and I have more amazing outcomes than I ever have before. And so that's just really rewarding to me.
Oh, that's really, really great. Yeah. So so let's dive down into what are some of the conditions, the processes in the bodies that lead to the manifestation of premenstrual syndrome, of PMS, as known as PMS, and fibroids and endometriosis. There's an imbalance of hormones, but there are processes that cause this imbalance. And one of those things that I talk about with my patients is estrogen dominance. And I would love it if you could talk about it from your experience about what estrogen dominance is, and how or what are the factors that causes that state, as well as other states. But let's start with that.
Yeah. So In this country, when girls go through puberty, they are pretty much not taught what their cycle means and how to be intuitive and listen to their body. We encourage girls to get on the pill, suppress those symptoms so that you don't really have to listen and not be uncomfortable and move on with your life. And so the minute you start having a little bit of discomfort or PMS or your period starts to get heavy, we don't question why. We question, how do we get rid of that annoyance and move on with life? If we started questioning why, we would see that it all stems from a hormone balance, which is the result of upstream problems. Other systems in our body, our thyroid, our adrenals, our toxic load that we obtain from the environment. There are root causes that are creating these shifts in our hormones, and they're showing up as symptoms that we're supposed to listen to. Those are messages from our body that says, hey, something's going on. You're going to get a heavy period because of you're making too much stress or cortisol. You're not eating well. And so this goes on, and women, they reach a point. It used to be early 40s. Now I'm seeing it as early as like early mid 30s that it all comes to a head. All of a sudden, their periods are so heavy. They're having accidents. Their periods are so painful that, they miss 2 days of work or school, or they've developed fibroids and endometriosis, like you said. And that is because you have had this imbalance of too much estrogen compared to progesterone and testosterone going on for so long that now your body cannot keep things in balance. At the core of endometriosis and fibroids, all those GYN diseases, that is chronic inflammation that is stemming from your gut, most likely, and a hormone imbalance. So when I give you the birth control pill or the surgery to fix it, I fixed the symptom, but I haven't really fixed the problem. And so then it shows up in other ways. Here's a sad example is when the endometrial ablation was created, I don't know, maybe 2000, 2005, all of a sudden, everybody started getting these ablations. We'd burn the lining of the uterus so that your period wouldn't be heavy anymore. 5-10 years later, you're diagnosed with breast cancer. And it's because that heavy period was a warning sign that you have estrogen dominance, and estrogen dominance was not dealt with. It was covered up. So we were so worried about uterine cancer being covered up as conventional gynecologists. Oh, you burn the lining, you won't be able to diagnose uterine cancer. We didn't even think about the other systems that are being impacted in the body by this estrogen imbalance. And so,
and it's not just gynecological systems, it's other systems, including your brain, right? There's other systems besides that. And that's where the mood disorders and depression and anxiety come out as well. And fibrocystic disease, we didn't even mention that, right? So if you have tender breasts and dense breasts, that's probably because of estrogen dominance.
Right, because estrogen is a growth type hormone. It wants to grow the lining of your uterus. It wants to grow breast tissue. It wants to grow fat cells so that, because your body thinks it's getting ready for a pregnancy. So everything needs to grow and be ready to have this baby. And if you don't keep that in check with progesterone, things are going to overgrow, be overstimulated. So when you get too much estrogen, it starts showing up as irritability, like you're going to rip your spouse's head off. You just can't tolerate things the way you used to tolerate them. Like I hear it all the time in my patients. I just, the littlest thing annoys me now. I just can't stand anybody.
Right.
And then you start talking about progesterone, which is more of an anti-anxiety type balancing hormone. So estrogen's like antidepressant, progesterone's like the anti-anxiety. When you start to lose progesterone because you're not ovulating or you have too much estrogen, all of a sudden you have anxiety for the first time that you never had in your life. That's a really common problem. Women are like, I never had it before. I was fine, but I went to the doctor at 40 and now I'm on, Paxil. And it's because their progesterone is too low compared to their estrogen. It's not that you have actual generalized anxiety disorder. It might develop into that, but most likely it's your hormone imbalance. And so you start having insomnia. You can't sleep at night, or you fall asleep, but then you wake up at 2 and 3 and 4. And then I see women have panic attacks. They get chest pain. They end up in the ER. And what does the ER do? They say, you're fine. You just had a panic attack. Go home. Well, they're not fine because they need progesterone. They need to get rid of that excess estrogen. So it's a complicated picture. And I want women and everyone to understand that our systems all ping off of each other. They all work together to try and keep the balance. So if one system is struggling, the other one's going to try and take up the slack, and sometimes to the very detriment of it, to the point where it just gets super imbalanced.
Right. And I think people need to understand is that it's not a simple solution to just give estrogen and progesterone. It's finding out why the progesterone is deficient and what are the factors that cause that. Because like you mentioned earlier, it could start in the gut. It could be a gut issue. It could be inflammation that then causes your cortisol levels to go up because your adrenaline is surging. And that, in order to make cortisol, it steals from progesterone. And so that's what's causing the progesterone deficiency. So sometimes we can replace temporarily, I think, with giving hormones directly, compounded progesterone and estrogen. But ultimately, the real goal is to bring that body back into balance. So you're making your own progesterone,
Yes. So let's talk about that. I think that's so important that, getting your hormones into a balanced state by replacing them or whatnot, that's a quick, easy win that I will sometimes do with patients so that they can feel good enough to go on and tackle their deeper issues. But like you said, we need to figure out the root causes of estrogen dominance and progesterone imbalance. So the gut, like you mentioned, is huge. I see it all of the time where women are on this standard American diet. They're just eating a lot of bagged and boxed food because it's quick, it's easy. Your microbiome gets disrupted. You create bad bacteria that actually create an enzyme called beta glucuronidase. You get too much of this going around. So, then you start reabsorbing your estrogens that you already had too much of in the first place. So I would love to just back up and explain to your listeners, we have 3 main types of estrogen that we produce in our body: estrone, estradiol, estriol. I like to think of them as Goldilocks and the 3 bears, because estrone is too hard. It's like Papa Bear's bed. It's a little bit too much. You don't want too much of estrone. Estradiol is like right in the middle. It's a reproductive hormone. You want to have that in a nice level because that's going to be what keeps your brain and heart healthy and your skin healthy and your vaginal health and keep your cycles balanced and be able to reproduce. And then estriol is like Mama Bear's bed. It's too soft. So it's a weaker estrogen and it's a safer estrogen, but it can't do the job that estradiol does to keep you healthy. And so you want to have these all in balance. But what happens is they get metabolized, they get broken down different pathways as your body has used them.
Right.
And what you alluded to is oftentimes that metabolism gets pushed into the wrong direction because of the gut or the liver or the gallbladder. And so we can make something called 4-hydroxyestrone, which is not a good pathway. If you're making too much of it, it starts to damage your DNA and your cells, and that increases your risk of cancer. So we want to make sure that it goes down a more healthy pathway toward the liver. And the liver has to be able to handle that estrogen and get it out of the body. Right. It has to be able to methylate it and get it. The gallbladder is going to help transport it, and it's all going to go to your stool and it's going to get removed. So if your liver's backed up and not taking out the trash, it's going to get backed up in your system that way. If your gallbladder's not working, it's sluggish, or you took out your gallbladder because it wasn't working, then it can't transport very well. If you have bad bacteria in your gut, even though the liver did its job and put the garbage tag on the estrogen and it got to the stool, if you have the wrong bacteria living in there, they will cut the garbage tag off the estrogen and you will reabsorb it.
Right.
And then if you're constipated, then it's got 2 or 3 days to reabsorb it. Then it's got all the time in the world to reabsorb that and other toxins. So you need to poop every day. You need to have the right gut bacteria. You need to have a proper functioning liver and gallbladder. And that all comes from diet and lifestyle intervention. So if you really dial all of that in, you can make some headway on estrogen dominance and get things balanced. The other piece of it you mentioned is the progesterone.
Right.
Progesterone's the main ingredient to make cortisol, our stress hormone. So this has been a really popular topic that I've seen lately with my patients. They want to run marathons. They want to do Ragnars. They want to do it's like they're ready to prove themselves, and every time you're doing those long, stressful trainings on your body physically, you're pumping out cortisol and adrenaline to be able to do that.
Right.
And that's great for like feeling like you've accomplished stuff and getting fit. But
and you might be feeling good. You
right.
Say, I feel fine, but it still affects your hormones. It still causes the hormone deficiency.
Yes. You're stealing progesterone to make that cortisol all day long. And that is really not how your female physiology was designed. And so you might not even have too much estrogen, but if you don't have enough progesterone because you stole it all to handle these daily stressors, fighting with your spouse, answering this emails, this job you hate, whatever is causing you stress and cortisol production, it's all stealing your progesterone. That can feel like estrogen excess in your body.
Right.
So,
and it doesn't even have to be the job that you hate or having bad stressors. It could be working like an Energizer bunny, happy as can be, right? Multitasking, jack of all trades, but never resting. Never resting. So, I mean, I have patients like, but I'm happy. It's like, well, I'm glad that you're happy. When are you resting? When? But I feel like I'm wasting time when I sit. I feel like if I take a bath, I'm wasting time. It's like, no, you're not wasting time. You're taking care of your body, right? So it is changing your mindset around like what is stress and stress could be just nonstop 24/7, and not closing shop. You got to close shop or down regulate and rest, even if you're not asleep, but to rest. Right.
Yeah, without a doubt. And sleep is one of the first symptoms. Sleep interruption is one of the first symptoms that women experience when this all goes awry, when you get this balance. And so I do like to get that progesterone level back up to help you sleep, because your brain needs that. You have this fluid that washes over your brain and does all of the healing and works on the neurotransmitter production. And so sleep is so much more important than we give it credit for. It's not just because we feel tired and we want to feel more energy. That is when our body actually does repair mechanisms and creates memories and fights cancer and all that, So I want women to respect the fact that they need some sleep and they need to figure out how to get it. And that does not mean ambient induced sleep, right?
Exactly. Because that's not good sleep either. Yeah.
No, that's dangerous sleep. That's like you're going to drive off in your car and hurt somebody without knowing it kind of sleep.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So let's go back to estrogen dominance again, in terms of what are some other things that mimic estrogen and can cause similar binding of receptors. I
Oh
don't think people realize that, my doctor did the estrogen levels and they said it was normal, and
yeah.
but you could still have estrogen dominance. Can you tell us why?
So that's a great point. And I will tell you that your conventional doctor has probably never heard the term estrogen dominance, because estrogen dominance was not an issue 50 years ago, 100 years ago. What we learn in medical school is already a little antiquated, but we didn't learn that because we did not have xenoestrogens in our environment the way we do today. The flexible plastic that we use to package all of our foods and, water bottles, all of that was not created until like the 40s and brought to us until maybe the 60s. And so these flexible plastics are very new to us as a civilization. Our bodies have never seen this until these past couple generations. And unfortunately, these are what we call xenoestrogens. The chemical makeup of what's in these plastics acts like estrogen in our body. So it leaches into the food and the water, and we drink it and we eat it. It's in our makeup. We soak it in through our skin.
Right.
And our body does not know how to get rid of it. They're like, we've never seen this before in civilization. So it accumulates in our body and attaches to the cell receptor that normally estrogen would attach to. And it's like, a jank lock, that key that fits in the lock. It fits enough to send the signal, but that's not the signal that you want. And there's no good way to measure how high your xenoestrogen levels are. So what I tell patients is, we're all getting bombarded with these environmental toxins. Our bodies have never seen this before. Our grandmothers did not have to deal with this until now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so when the labs are measuring estradiol or estrone, they're not measuring these crazy chemicals that I can't even pronounce because their names are so scientific. It's all just man-made stuff that we created in a lab that did not exist in this world before 50 or 100 years ago. Right. So we don't know how to measure it very accurately, but I promise you it's contributing to your symptoms, because we see time and time again, when we start to decrease that toxic burden, we start to remove those from your life, your symptoms improve. I have women who just do, a detox and clean up their food and makeup line and their hair products, their laundry soap, and that estrogen dominance goes away.
Yeah. And it's really looking at your entire environment and the kinds of products that you buy, the mattress you buy, the carpets you buy, the furniture you buy, the paint you put on your walls, right? It's really looking at those toxins as well, because they are very similar in structure, a lot of these chemicals, to estrogen and as well as other hormones too, but specifically estrogen is what we're talking about. So yeah, it is a matter of looking outside of what you're breathing in, what you're putting on your skin, and what you're eating, and really pull away from eating anything that's wrapped in plastic. There are these products, a lot of products that come out even in the functional medicine world, where you can get healthy foods packaged in and gets delivered to your door, and there's a lot of plastic still, if you are getting foods because you're busy and it really helps your lifestyle, to be able to at least get a healthy meal. What I recommend, if you have to do that and you can't actually make your own meals, instead of going into McDonald's, at least take it out of that plastic wrap, put it in an actual plate or microwavable or baking dish, and heat it up that way.
Yes, and don't reheat your leftovers in your plastic Tupperware containers. Please don't do that.
Yes.
I know I see this all the time with my kids, because kids eat a lot of processed food. You can do your best to help them eat their vegetables and stay away from it. But in reality, we know kids eat a lot of boxed and bagged food. And just like you, I say, if you got to have these mashed potatoes that are already made, like take them out of the plastic, heat them up in a glass or ceramic bowl. Those little changes, get them a stainless steel water bottle instead of buying the 24 pack, especially
That's what I have. Stainless steel water bottle.
The very flexible plastics, like the cheap water bottles, you don't know what they did in transit. So, I have women who say, well, I don't let them get heated. I don't leave them in my car. You don't know what the truck drivers did and in transit, exactly. They were probably in 100-degree weather or whatever else. And so those plastics are in the water without a doubt. So if you can minimize it to the best of your ability, and I like to say, just take baby steps. You don't have to go clean out your house, like empty it out and start. But as you run out of something, try a different option, Once your makeup is out, try a different brand, try a clean brand. Right. I send everybody to the environmental working group, ewg.org, and see which products are really toxic and which ones are a better option, and just start to change it out as you need to. It doesn't have to feel overwhelming. If you make this change over 1 year, you'll probably gain so much of your health and your life back in the long term. It's totally worth it.
Right. Yeah. There is a specific spot on the environmental working group website called Skin Deep, where you can actually put in the product that you are using to see if it is safe and all of the problems with that product. And it also provides a list of products that are deemed safe in terms of makeup and things like that. So I believe there's even an app, if I remember correctly. I have to double check on that. But
I didn't know that. That would be cool.
There is an app where you can actually scan the what do you call that code? That
barcode,
barcode, or you can scan the barcode and it comes right up. So if you're in the store, you can scan whatever products you're looking at it pops up right away to tell you whether it's safe. I will put that in the show notes, everybody.
That is awesome.
That and put that in the show notes, and I'll share that with you too, Dr.
Yeah,
Jeffrey.
I think that's a great resource. And I know personally, I felt overwhelmed when I started to realize how many thousands of chemicals the United States has created and put out into the environment in the last 70 plus years. Right. And it felt scary and overwhelming. So I would encourage you to just take the baby steps. And, if you're starting to feel scared and overwhelmed, just know that that's a common reaction. But if we can start to make some headway, because the other piece of it that I see is those chemicals create so many mood disorders. Wouldn't you agree? It just contributes to anxiety and depression so much. Absolutely. We gotta clean it up.
Absolutely. And so the way you can take control of your life is by getting as clean as possible in terms of your diet, your functioning, getting your sleep in order, moving. Movement helps, improving your lymphatic drainage, and getting, as you said, getting the liver, the gallbladder, and your colon really working efficiently to remove those toxins, so I call it I kind of compare it to the dryer filter, or the oil filter of your car. We have to physically change those things, but our body has the ability to change those things on its own, but you have to supply all the nutrients for it to do it efficiently on a regular basis. And so sometimes, just like if you drove through a dust storm, right, with your car, that filter is going to get, the air filter and the oil, they're going to get gunged up a lot faster than if you didn't drive through a dust storm, and you'd have to change it immediately. But, so our bodies are being overwhelmed by these toxins nowadays as compared to, like you said, 50 years ago. And so we have to work harder to make sure our body's able to detox or remove these chemicals and other substances as efficiently as possible. So you do have the power to do this. It's just knowing what the steps are. And then what happens, getting back to estrogen and progesterone, what happens is that the estrogen normalizes your body's response to estrogen alone, the real estrogen normalizes, and hopefully you're taking away all those chemicals that, act like estrogen. Right?
Yeah. I mean, here's an example. If people are like, I don't know if I buy all this stuff. Man boobs is a result of the plastics in our environment. Precocious puberty. Girls used to start their periods, 10 or 11. Now we're seeing it down to 8 and 9 years old because of all of the plastics in our food and water supply. I mean, it's so evident in the obesity. I remember when I was a kid, there would be one child who was overweight in like the entire grade. And it was like, wow, why are they overweight? And, they would get teased and all that horrible stuff. But now I look at children, I still have young kids, and I look at the grade, and the majority are overweight. And it's not because, it's partly because of the garbage we're eating, but it's partly because of the chemicals that are in our food.
Right.
And so if we can really help to clean that up, those obesity genes aren't being activated and turned on. Estrogen, like I said, is a growth hormone, and it makes, your fat cells fatter. And the horrible part, this is that fat cells then make its own estrogen called estrone. It changes testosterone into estrone, the bad estrogen we don't want. So the more fat cells that you're holding on to and can't get rid of, the more estrogen production. It's like a vicious cycle. And so you've got to figure out where to break it. And breaking it is releasing that toxic burden, getting those out of your system.
Right. And by the way, that's the reason why you don't lose weight either. So when you have a problem losing weight, despite exercise and change in diet, it's usually because of those toxins like pesticides and chemical exposure, and other toxins as well, which we won't talk about. But it is a matter of looking at the big picture and not feeling like a failure, like it's not your fault.
Right.
It's multi-pronged. So if you've done exercise and dietary change, then you got to look at the other prongs, the other areas that might be contributing to you not losing weight, and also not, improving your mood, So, exactly. Yeah. And, one of the things when I do a person's timeline, if a person started having periods at the age of 13 and they had severe periods right from the get-go, I know that their toxin burden started many years before. It's a great way. That's the beauty of having periods. It gives you an idea about the health of a person, is their ability to have regular periods without pain. By the way, PMS is a problem. It's not normal to have PMS. It's not normal to have menopause. Menopause is just it should be just, I haven't had a period for a year, not like, all these mood swings and pain, it's not normal to have all of these symptoms. So the last couple generations grew up thinking like, oh, that's what you're supposed to have is pain and heavy. No, that's not normal.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more. That is the root of it right there, is we have created these problems with our new society, and it affects our physiology, and we are so wrapped up in living in it, and everybody feels it, that we think it must be normal when it really is not. I do not believe God created us to be miserable, 2 weeks out of the month and to have all of these problems. You look back and study history and the history of gynecology, those just didn't exist. Those were outliers. Those, were weird. And so we just need to figure out why are we having all of these symptoms in our young girls, and stop giving them birth control pills to cover it up. We
Mhm.
got to clean up their diets. We got to help them get more sleep, especially as teenagers. We got to help them handle the stress of wearing masks and being afraid of COVID and all those things that are creating anxiety and
Right.
stealing their progesterone. And fix it from the root cause. You'll be doing them such a huge favor if you can actually teach them that.
Yeah. 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 So I think we're running out of time. I would love for you to share about how people can get in touch with you. I know and I will have it all in the show notes, but also to just tell everyone about the book that you wrote. Because I did not mention it in the beginning. And you're going to be giving away the Functional Gynecologist Guide to Balancing Your Hormones. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if you go to my website, drtabatha.com, it's 3 A's, no I's. You can sign up for that ebook, How to Balance Your Hormones Naturally. I really go into everything we kind of talked about today, because if you work on those areas, your hormones hopefully will balance. And if you need deeper one-on-one work, I do that with women all over the country, even outside of the country.
Mhm.
We figure it out. We make it work because women need a different approach. They're tired of going and not getting any answers and not being heard. So I will spend the time with you one-on-one. I see patients virtually all the time. So go to drtabatha.com. And yeah, if you want to check out my book, it's about my story of, high school dropout, finding my purpose and trying to empower women. It's called From White Trash to White Coat because I was picked on and bullied as a kid. I was told I was not going to be anything when I grew up. And
Mhm.
so I wrote it because I want women to feel empowered that they can literally do anything they put their mind to. And I use my faith as my guiding light and my power push. So whatever it takes for you, but I just believe we're all created for a purpose and we
Right.
need to tap in and figure that out. So definitely reach out to me if you want to connect or you feel like any of this made sense to you, right? Or you can listen to the Functional Gynecologist podcast where we talk about all this stuff. Dr. Achina's been on there talking
Yeah.
about mood. So yeah, just
Yeah.
keep working on it. It's a journey.
It is. And you've seen it, at least one of my patients. I've referred a couple, but I know you've
Yes,
seen at least
yes.
one of my patients so far. So, you said earlier, I wanted to grow up to be a rock star. Right. Well, guess what? You are a rock star.
Aw.
You are just not the type you thought about when you were
Yes,
a kid, but
which
you
is
are
good. I
a rock
don't need
star.
the drunken show and the drugs and the groupies. I don't need all that, right?
Right,
I
right.
just
You
need a
are a rock
stage.
star.
I need a platform. So thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
you are. Well, thank you for being here today and talking about these issues and letting the world know about functional gynecology and how it intersects with mood. And thank you.